Hello everyone, my name's Kate and I'm here in the Eastside Freedom Library in St. Paul, Minnesota. And it's still the month of June, and June is the month where we celebrate Pride. So you might already know all about Pride, your family might already celebrate it, you might have participated in Pride events, most of which are canceled this year because we're not getting together in big groups, but maybe last year you went to a parade or some other event. Or maybe you've never heard of Pride before. So Pride is the celebration of all the different kinds of ways that people make families together, all the different kinds of ways that people live in their bodies, all the different kinds of ways that people love each other, but especially the way that LGBT people love each other. So I am a woman and I have a husband who's a man, and that's a way that you can be in a relationship and make a family and love one another. But that's not really what we're celebrating when we celebrate Pride. We're celebrating all the other kinds of ways you can do it. So the L stands for lesbian, and that's when two women are in a relationship together or in a family together. And G stands for gay, and that's when two men are in a relationship together or in a family together. B stands for bisexual, and that's when you sometimes want to be in a relationship with a man, and sometimes you want to be in a relationship with a woman, and you'll do either, and maybe it changes over the course of your life. And T stands for transgender, and that means you were born in a body, and the doctors thought you were a boy or thought you were a girl, and when you got older and you were able to better understand how you thought about yourself, you said, you know what, that's not exactly right. I'm actually not a girl, I'm a boy, I'm not a boy, I'm a girl, or maybe that you are neither. So there are people in my life, for example, who don't identify as a boy or a girl, and they use the pronoun they. So what we celebrate during Pride Month is all the different kinds of ways that people can live in their bodies, all the different kinds of ways that people can make families, all the different ways that people can be in relationships with one another. And we have these big, beautiful events that celebrate those. So the stories that I have for you today are about Pride and what it's like to be at a Pride event. And then I have a story for you about the Stonewall Uprising, which is an event that shaped how we think about what we call in my family the new rules about gender. So you might know that some people think only men and women should be in a relationship together, only men and women should be in a family together. And in our household, we call that the old rules about gender. But what Stonewall and that uprising helped us realize is that we need new rules about gender, which means that we can live in our bodies however we want, we can be in families however we want, and we can love each other however we want. But we had to fight for that. And Stonewall is an example of how people fought together for that. And then the last story I have for you is about a flag that you might have seen, the rainbow flag, and how that came to be. So the first one is called This Day in June by Gail Pittman. This day in June, parade starts soon, rainbow arches, joyful marches. Motors roaring, spirits soaring. Voices chanting, doggies panting. Clad in leather, perfect weather. Artists painting, sisters sainting. Banners swaying, children playing. Dancers jumping, music pumping. Sidewalk shaking, tummies aching. I guess because they ate too much stuff at the fair, the festival. Painted ladies, crying babies. Fancy dresses, flowing tresses. Tresses means hair. Loving kisses, so delicious. All invited, all excited. This day in June, we're all united. Okay, So the next book is called Stonewall, A Building, an Uprising, a Revolution, and it's by Rob Sanders. Two stable houses side by side. For more than 100 years, we witnessed history. Then came a night when we became part of history. We were built in the 1840s to board the horses of the affluent in New York City's Greenwich Village. Inside our brick walls, horses whinnied and hammers clanged. Outside, passerbys bustled as carriages rumbled on the cobblestone streets. As time passed, the wealthy residents began to move uptown, taking with them their art clubs, libraries, fine hotels, and theaters. Our neighborhood became a mecca for immigrants arriving from all over the world. Visitors made their way to Greenwich Village, and many of them stayed. Greenwich Village was changing too. Greenwich Village was changing, and we changed too. The smell of freshly baked bread began to waft out of our windows and into the neighborhood. The roar of automobiles replaced the rumble of carriages as artists and writers moved in. Contemporary art galleries, experimental theaters, and small restaurants sprang up around us. The village was becoming the creative center of New York City. By 1930, our two buildings were joined together, and we became Bonnie's Stonewall Restaurant. Celebrities, artisans, tourists, and local residents lunched at our tables, shoulder to shoulder. Greenwich Village was a place where you could be yourself, where you could be different, and all was welcome and accepted. Newness thumped in the heart of Greenwich Village in the 1950s, vibrating our windows, and musicians played on the streets. Jazz filled the air. Poets performed in our restaurants. Artists painted in their studios. The beat movement arrived, and we all witnessed it. Leading up to the 1960s, our neighborhood welcomed gays and lesbians, men who loved men and women who loved women. We were a home for people who were told they didn't fit in or belong. We had welcomed all kinds of people before, so we knew what to do. In 1967, we swung open our doors and became the Stonewall Inn. Gay men and women from throughout the city and the country came to meet old and new friends, free to be themselves inside our walls. Women and men, young and old, teenagers, transgender people, drag queens, veterans, business people, students, people of different colors, religions, and cultures gathered, chattered, laughed, and danced under our roof. Others were not as accepting. They thought those who gathered within our walls were too different. That's what we mean when we talk about the old rules about gender. We heard the whispered voices of those inside. Loving someone like yourself was illegal. Socializing together could get you arrested. Wearing the wrong clothes could land you in jail. Who's ever heard of the wrong clothes? Being gay could get you fired or kicked out of your home. Some nights we heard fists pounding on our doors, felt angry footsteps stomping across our floor, and saw flashes of glaring light as the police arrested some of those inside. After each raid, those who hadn't been arrested left quietly, angrily, disappearing into the darkness. We stood tall and kept opening our doors, and people kept coming. But the police raids kept coming too. We couldn't stop them. In the steaming early morning of June 28, 1969, under a nearly full moon, another raid began. "Police!" a voice shouted. "We're taking the place." Officers stormed inside our doors, lining the people up inside, demanding IDs and detaining some and arresting others. This time, those not arrested didn't disappear into the night. Instead, they stood defiantly in the street and on the sidewalk under our rusty sign. This time, they weren't quiet. As the ones arrested led to the police cars and patrol wagons, the anger of the crowd was lit. "Why don't you do something?" yelled one woman as she was forced into a police car. Immediately, the spark of anger grew into smoldering resistance. Shouts and screams echoed off bricks, fists thrust in the air. We saw the faces of the crowd and felt their rage. The Stonewall Uprising had begun. The police, shocked by the defiance of the crowds, rushed back in and barricaded themselves inside. Our friends stood outside, trying to force open our doors. Our windows were shattered, smoke drifted through our rooms. We stood firm. Years of silent anger inflamed the crowd. The police called for help and soon it arrived. The fires were extinguished. The police came back outside, but the crowd's anger was not extinguished. "Gay power," the protesters shouted. "We want freedom." The police had never seen anything like it before, and neither had we. It wasn't over. The Stonewall Uprising continued off and on for several days and nights. A new day was dawning for the gay rights movement. The change had begun here, inside our walls, at the Stonewall Inn. This movement is now known as the LGBTQ+ rights movement. On June 28, 1970, our windows looked out on men and women gathering to celebrate the first anniversary of the Stonewall Uprising. At first, hundreds marched. Then thousands of women and men, young and old, teenagers, transgender people, drag queens, veterans, business people, students, people of different colors, religions, and cultures, and their friends and family joined to parade through the streets of New York City. "Say it clear, say it loud, gay is good and gay is proud," they chanted. Many things are different now. Some things have changed. Even some laws have changed. Now 2 men who love each other, or 2 women who love each other, can marry. We know, we've seen their happy faces snapping photos outside our door. We've heard their footsteps walking side by side along our floors. We have felt their love. Each year in June, people all over the world celebrate the movement for LGBTQ+ rights, a movement that has come so far, a movement that still has further to go. They celebrate inside and outside our walls. They celebrate freedom. They celebrate equality. And it all began here one night at the Stonewall Inn when 2 horse stables became part of history. So that's a story about how it's difficult and hard sometimes to stand up for what you know is right, to stand up for freedom. And we've seen lots of examples of people standing up for freedom in all the stories that we've read. And so this is a story about how it's hard and a little bit scary sometimes, but then there's also the story that we just read about how it can be fun and you can celebrate and it can be a happy event too. So this last book that I have for you today is about the way that they started to make a flag that you might have seen before. It's called a rainbow or pride flag, and it's a story about a man named Harvey Milk. And it's called Pride, the Story of Harvey Milk and the Rainbow Flag. You have to give them hope. Hope for a better world. Hope for a better tomorrow. Harvey Milk was an ordinary man, but he had an extraordinary dream. That dream would change history. Harvey dreamed that everyone, even gay people, would have equality. He dreamed that he and his friends would be treated like everyone else. He dreamed that one day people would be able to live and love as they pleased. With his New York accent, Harvey talked to everyone about his dream. His voice boomed, his body bounced with energy and excitement. Some people listened. A few agreed, but most did not. But Harvey's big voice and his big dream wouldn't be stopped. He discovered that the best way to change laws was to help make laws. And in 1977, Harvey Milk took a big step toward that dream when he became one of the first openly gay people to be elected to political office in the United States. Harvey and his friends planned marches to protest inequality and unfair laws. And just days before one of the marches, Harvey had an idea. A symbol, he thought. We need a symbol, one that shows who we are and how we feel. Something to carry during the march, something to make people feel like they're part of a community, something to give people hope, something extraordinary. And see, these pictures are all pictures of other symbols that he's thinking of when he's trying to think of his symbol. Harvey knew an artist who could help. Gilbert Baker. Harvey asked. Gilbert said, "We need a flag." Volunteers arrived to help Gilbert's design come to life. Together, they dipped fabric into large barrels filled with vivid, vibrant dyes. They cut and pieced and sewed until Harvey, Gilbert, and the other activists had a flag with 8 colorful stripes, a flag Harvey hoped would give hope. Rights are won only by those who make their voices heard. On June 25th, 1978, when it was time for the march, a breeze stirred in San Francisco. The flag unfurled. The wind blew, the flag fluttered, flapped, and flew. A rainbow, as bright and unique as the men and women who walked behind it, led the march. I would say the men and women and people, because not everybody identifies as a man or a woman who is marching behind that flag. Harvey and the people asked for equality. They asked to be treated like everyone else. They asked to live and love as they pleased, and they hoped the march would make a difference. Harvey was proud of the flag and proud of himself. He hoped others could be proud too. 5 months later, on the morning of November 27, 1978, Harvey and the mayor of San Francisco, George Moscone, were assassinated. Their lives were taken by a man who did not think like Harvey or feel like him or love like him. So assassinated means killed. The flag did not fly on that dark, sad night. Instead, thousands and thousands of people marched silently, carrying candles. The candlelight wove through the streets of San Francisco, up and down hills and around city buildings. A mile of glowing candlelight in honor of 2 lives lost. That could have been the end of Harvey's dream in the colorful flag, but it wasn't. More rainbow flags were created. Some of the colors changed, and 8 stripes became 6 stripes, but the meaning of the flag did not change. It was a flag of equality. More and more people began to think of the flag as their flag, and they began to feel pride, and they began to have hope. In 1994, Gilbert Baker designed another rainbow flag. This one was larger than all the rest. Women, men, and other people side by side carried the flag, a proud mile-long rainbow floating through New York City. The flag wove through the streets and up and down avenues and boulevards and around the city buildings. The people demanded equality. They demanded to be treated like everyone else. They demanded to live and love as they pleased. And they were proud, and they had hope, and they would make a difference. I ask for the movement to continue, for the movement to grow. More rainbow flags were made. Some were printed on bumper stickers and t-shirts, and others were hoisted onto lampposts on Halsted Street in Chicago. One was hung in the Museum of Modern Art in New York City. Soon, the rainbow flag was flying in other countries like Brazil, England, Israel, Russia, Singapore, and Turkey. The rainbow flag now unfurled on farms, in suburbs, and cities. The flag flew proudly outside public buildings, hotels, shops, restaurants, churches, and homes. And once, on June 26, 2015, the White House was awash in the colors of the rainbow flag. Equality, pride, hope, and love. Harvey's dream became a flag for us all. Okay, that's all I have for you guys today. Thanks, and I will see you next week.
Thank you for visiting our video. I'm Beth Cleary.
I'm Peter Ratcliffe, and this is Orso, the library dog.
We are the co-founders and co-executive directors of the East Side Freedom Library in St. Paul, Minnesota.
Our mission is to inspire solidarity, work for justice, and advocate for equity for all. If you enjoy our programming and want to support our work, please visit our website, eastsidefreedomlibrary.org.